I'm going to tell you about Bude, what was community network area, so it's Bude and all the surrounding parishes, and the work that we did on determining the emissions locally. And they're going to be a bit different to the Cornwall-wide ones because it's a different kind of character area than Cornwall as a whole. I'm Charmian Larke. I work for Atlantic Energy, and I've been in renewable energy and carbon and climate change stuff for many, many years, more years than I like to admit usually. I'm also chair of Fal Energy Partnership, which is a community energy project. So half the time I work for no money, and some of the time I manage to get paid when I'm working for Atlantic Energy. Right, this is just a quick pie chart to just say generically, but it's not necessarily specific to here, that emissions of climate impacting greenhouse gases fall into two camps. Although Nick gave us four, because he's broken down the energy stuff. Basically, it's land use and agriculture and energy. And what people don't really realise is our economy is an energy economy. Without energy, we're back to medieval times or worse, because we don't have the skills they had then. And if we want economic growth, we need more energy. So it's something to really think about the structure of our systems. So at the local level, we have direct energy use, or as Nick was saying, the Cornwall level energy use, which is at home, at work, travelling to and from any place you go, and when you go out socially or meeting friends or relatives. And I like the socks on the radiator because that's the kind of thing I have to do at home. So when you're looking at the direct emissions for energy, which is the main thing I would focus on here, because that's a lot more certain, whereas the land use emissions are more uncertain. And I'm an energy person, so naturally I concentrate on that. And that was the work I was doing for Bude Climate Partnership. So first of all, you assess your local statistics, and then you work out the emissions related to each of those energy sources and which sectors the demand is coming from. So oil is used for car, bus, bike, and obviously it's used for planes, but that's not in this particular analysis. Goods by various different vehicles. In the home for heating, there's a lot of in-home heating, and at work for heating, and that's nearly 50% of the local area energy use. And that's partly because there's very little gas. Less than 50% of homes. Electricity, we all know how we use electricity for lighting, appliances, heating at home, and at work, lighting, appliances, heating, manufacturing. And there is obviously now a small amount of electricity used for transport as electric cars are beginning to come in. Then gas is used for home heating and cooking generally. And in commerce and industry, it's used for cooking, obviously, catering purpose, catering, heating, and some manufacturing where high temperatures are required. That is 21% of local energy use. So the main demands for energy are the domestic sector, which is 40%, so that's the blue, and transport, 41%. So they're roughly equal locally, and then a small amount for the non-domestic commercial industrial sector. And that's because, as you will know, there's not a very large industrial sector or commercial sector here. It's very rural, and the non-domestic sector is not high energy users. There aren't any major manufacturers, no major users of electricity. Some people reckon they are major users of electricity, but when you look at the system, the electricity system and the information available actually are not huge compared to, say, China clay or pasty makers or something like that. So hopefully that pie chart shows you visually the breakdown of the demand sectors. Then, if we want to turn that into our climate emissions, we have to look at each sort of energy, each kind of fuel, electricity, gas, petrol, diesel, and so on, LPG. And then we multiply that by the CO2 equivalent. So I won't bother you with the units because we instantly get into masses and masses of units, and I still get confused on occasions. I lose noughts and decimal places all over the place, so I have to keep checking. But the highest amount of carbon, or carbon dioxide equivalent, so that's all the gases together in one pot, as it were, is for electricity. even though we've got lots of renewable electricity, we've still got a high proportion of gas in the UK electricity mix. And the second highest is oil, so that's petrol, diesel, and heating for home. So what I've done is a bit unconventional, worked out what the emissions are for each of those fuels, and then subtracted the local renewables electricity. We didn't have good enough information on renewables used for heating. There is a bit, but not very much. So we've just subtracted the electricity because we know about that. It's easy to find out about. So the area then has, I think hopefully that should be the next one. That's our carbon footprint locally. So it's 49%, so it's nearly 50% from oil use. That's all the driving around everybody does. No blame attached because it's not very good bus service. 1/3 is for electricity, 17% for gas. Then if you take off the local electricity production, and I take off from that what's exported, so I did a calculation on when there's too much solar in the summer, for example, it can't all be used, that goes up country. So it doesn't get used locally, so it's not included in that sum. So we end up with the local carbon footprint being 57,300 tonnes a year of carbon CO2 equivalent. So that's all the gases added up in according to what proportion of impact they have on the climate. So if we work that out per person, it's only 3 tonnes per person per year. I was a bit worried about this when I worked it out because I hadn't bothered to work it out before. I'd just done the numbers. I thought, oh no, that's only half of what Nick says it is. And then I thought, well, actually, it isn't surprising. It's not everybody's really poor and they're not doing anything. It's more that there's no major industry here because this number, and Nick's number as well for the 6 tonnes per person per year, is actually including all the transport, all the food, which is trundled around the place, all the commercial sector, all together in one pot. So it's 3 tonnes here because the commercial sector is smaller. Plus, as Nick has already said, all our stuff. So I'm just going to give you a couple of numbers on these. So this is our indirect energy. So it's all the energy that's used to make all the things that we buy when we buy new. And the clue there of what we can do is buying new, i.e. don't buy new. So if you want to buy an SUV, and some people love them, that's 30 tonnes in the manufacturing. Now, if you want to stick to a low carbon footprint of 1 or 2 tonnes per person per year, that's 15 to 30 years of your carbon allowance. So that means you can't actually drive that car. You can't go to the supermarket and buy a lettuce even, because you've used up many years of your allowance. But a small car, like my little one, is only 6 tonnes per year, although I got it second hand, so probably I can count it as less. So there's arguments about how much do you count for when you buy something second hand. Imported food, generally nationally, is 0.5 tonne per person per year. So again, that gives you clues about ways to change how your system works locally. And the thing about imported food is it's stuff that's coming from the other side of the planet, like avocado pears from Peru or wherever, actually Mexico often, isn't it? I long to eat avocado pears. I'm trying to grow them in my polytunnel, but I haven't succeeded in getting any to fruit yet. Jeans, they're there. That's only, as it says, it's 20 kilos approximately. This is for Levi's. I looked at their very detailed 50-page analysis on how much the carbon is of them growing the cotton, creating the fibre, making the jeans, etc. And they reckon 12 kilos of carbon dioxide equivalent in washing them. So wear them for a long time before you wash them. That's not what that says. And apparently in America they wash them lots, and in China they don't wash them very much at all. So that was a European level washing. So it's something to be aware of. It's part of our sort of head change bit, is being aware that everything we do has an impact because it's using energy. Unless it's renewable electricity or renewable fuels, it's having a climate impact. So what I just want to do is go slightly beyond my remit and say, why do we need to know this? So what's the reason for wanting to understand our carbon costs? So carbon cost in this sense is the CO2 equivalent, i.e. all the carbon stuff, carbon-related stuff, which has a greenhouse impact. So it's hard to manage what you're not measuring. That's one of the key management tools which people learn about in business school. They don't necessarily do it, but they do learn about it. We need to understand the present position, and we really need to know how bad it is, so that we can then, in some detail, then able to work out for our local systems what we want to do to improve the situation. And there may be other reasons you could think of why you need to know this information, ones I haven't necessarily written down here. And you need to know what's going to be effective. So I'm just, as a general thing, saying there's not a lot to learn in the world of energy, carbon and climate change. I've been working on it for many years, and I'm still learning every day, or most days anyway. The key principles are the thing to focus on, because there's huge amounts of detail and we can't all take it in. But if we can gather the principles from this information, then we're doing well. And I think you've already been starting to think about this question. What kind of world do you want to live in? And that then determines what your principles are and what you think is the right thing to do in terms of understanding these emissions and where they're important. And that's me after the end of a hard day in the office, all bedraggled. Thank you.